Well, the topic that we are covering tonight is on breeding and genetics. And we have there are three of us who have been working on this. Myself, my name is Morgan Dorn. I'm a Livestock and Natural Resources Advisor with UC Cooperative Extension. And we also have Dr. Rosie Bush from UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine. Rosie's waving her hand. And we also have our guest producer, who is we're really happy to have Julia Elgoriaga with Elgoriaga Livestock. Julie has had a busy week. Julia is working cattle and was able to break away for this, so we're really thankful for that, Julia. It is in a location where she has cell phone service, but not a good place for video. So we have Julia on cell phone, and Julia's gonna be sharing a lot of her experiences with targeted grazing and more specifically breeding and genetics. And so the format is going to be much like an interview format for Julia. We're going to ask Julia questions on various topics as we work through some topics. And so we look forward to Julia's information. Julia, is there you want to provide, I'll have some questions for you on your operation, but Brad, do you want to say something about yourself? What you do,
Um,
where you do it?
sure. I'm from Madeira. Um, I've been working with my dad now. My dad and my grandpa. We've been running sheep traditionally for, a long time. um, Basically, my great grandpa came over from the Basque Country in the 1920s, and we've been running sheep ever since. So we've been running sheep a long time here in the Central Valley. With targeted grazing, that's a new thing. We started that. We got Dorpers in 2020, and we started, getting jobs and stuff the next year once I kind of figured out how to handle the animals and how they were different and things like that. Because they are different, and there was a learning curve. But yeah, so it's me. I went to school in Idaho. I've done different things. I ended up coming back and working alongside with my dad and with my grandpa. We run sheep and cows, and we farm, do some custom harvesting. Takes a lot, to make everything work, especially in California. So yeah.
So you guys definitely have a lot going on. You have the sheep, you have targeted grazing, commercial sheep operation, and cattle as well, and
Yep.
farming.
Yep.
And you're based in Madeira. Are you kind of located in the valley, Madeira, or more towards the hills?
We're towards Fireball, so we're in the valley.
Okay, so
In the
that's
valley.
west side.
Yes, West Madeira.
Okay, got it.
Yep. We're based out of Madeira, but we go, all over the place.
Right. Okay. Well,
I'm
Julia,
on the road a lot.
thank you very much for taking the time. I know it's a busy time for you. We really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah. Hopefully my
Um,
phone service holds.
let's hope
I'm
so.
amazed. I was on the phone for like 45 minutes before I switched, so switched to this one. So
All
far, so
right.
good.
We'll keep our fingers crossed for
But
that.
yes. So, yeah.
All right. So some of the topics we're going to cover today cover a wide range of topics in regarding breeding and genetics. We're going to start by covering some genetic strategies in commercial and targeted grazing blocks, some traditional methods of genetic selection, as well as some newer methods, estimating breeding values. We'll explain more of what that is and what it means. Uh, Basically choosing breeding stock and the selection criteria for dams, sires and dams. Some of the breeding attributes, breed attributes, and sources of breeds, some basic breeding information, preparing for breeding practices, seasonality of reproduction, and then also advanced reproduction technologies. And Rosie and I are covering certain topics, and Rosie and I are both going to be kind of engaging with Julia throughout this throughout the webinar, getting Julia's input, experience, information on how Julia and her family basically put into practice their genetic selection strategies. So to get things started, Julia, got some questions for you. You've said a bit about your operation. Can you say again when you started doing targeted grazing and also, perhaps more importantly, why you started doing targeted grazing?
Okay. So, like I said, we purchased our first Dorpers in 2020, and I don't remember what time of year it was. It was, some oddball time of year. But, and we started doing jobs in 2021. Nothing crazy, just we didn't have a whole lot. I think I don't even remember how many we started with. It wasn't a whole lot though. But, we bought them because we knew we had to start making a change. We knew that we had to find a way to make more money if we wanted to continue running sheep, we needed to make more money. And the Dorpers were a way to have a little bit less input into the sheep also, because one, you don't have to shear them. That's, that's one more thing. That's one more thing you have to do with the traditional sheep. So there's that. Labor's really expensive, which I think we all know that. Each choice sheep produce, it's almost $5,000 a month before you count in groceries and all the other
And
goodies
that's
they get.
for the H2A herder who's there 24/7, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
$5,000 a
So
month.
currently.
Yeah.
So, that's a pretty damn good gig. But so it wasn't that, but back then, we knew it was creeping up, and we was like, we knew, we have to do something. We need to look outside the box. What can we change? What can we do? So my dad, I was in school at the time, so I wasn't really around, but he said, I'm buying. There was a bunch of Dorpers, like, I don't know, a mile away from the rest of our sheep. They weren't working. I don't know what the deal was. I don't really know the specifics. He said, I need to buy those sheep. And I said, okay, that's weird. He said, I have to buy those sheep. And he bought those sheep. And now we have expanded on the Dorper thing. And now I understand why. When I was in college, I wasn't here. I was living in Idaho, so I didn't see everything that was going on.
Okay.
So, but yeah. So basically, we needed to make more money. So that's why we started
Dorpers
doing
look
it.
like a good breed to use for targeted grazing compared to the commercial sheep relative to the commercial sheep that
Yeah.
you have.
Oh yeah, and you can push them harder, so that's another
Mhm.
bonus. You don't got you don't need to shear them, so that's a big plus.
Mhm.
You're not worried about the wool quality. You can push them a lot harder on poorer quality feed. You still need to supplement them, but
Mhm.
you can run them harder. You can run them harder. So
And Julia, your commercial flock, can you say something about that? It's like what
yeah.
breed or what is it you're striving for with your commercial flock? Is it wool, meat, or
So
just primarily meat?
our commercial flock, they're kind of our own. They're not really a polypay, and they're not really any. They're kind of our own thing. They're kind of a half targy, half fin situation. All the ewes and the rams we buy for the replacement ewes, that's what they are. They're half targy, half fin. We do that. They throw good milk. They have good prolificity. They breed out of season real well. They don't have the finest wool, but it's not super coarse. It's a nice medium, usually between like a 24. Average is like a 24, 23 micron, which isn't too bad. There is a market for it. But our primary thing is meat. So we buy a lot of, Suffolk and composite rams, and see how many 85 to 95 pound lambs we can crank out and get out there, because that's where you make your money, right there with lambs anyway.
Okay.
At least in California, at least for us, how fast can we get a lamb to 85 to 95 pounds? So that's kind of our thing.
And that's the selling weight that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's kind of what we look for. We honestly don't really look to take anything past 95 pounds.
Okay.
We don't see the point in it. At that point, we're just like, all right, we're kind of feeding them for what point now, the cost to gain, getting past kind of our number. We like keeping it under 90. We like to keep it between 85 and 95. That's kind of the best for us in our feed stuff that we use and stuff we feed off on typically. So, yeah.
Okay. So 2000.
Is that a good enough answer?
Yeah, that's great. And so in 2000, your dad saw these Dorpers. They were close by. He saw the
2020.
2020. That's right. 2020.
Yeah.
He saw the Dorpers close by. He said, "I got to have those." And he was thinking at the time that targeted grazing was the direction you wanted to go. And you were in Idaho at the time.
Yeah.
You got the
I
Dorper.
wasn't even going to be working with him at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. He was just going to do it for himself. Well, it had nothing to do with me.
Okay.
I was doing my own thing. I was working for almond processors. I was doing almond stuff. I was like, I'm not working with you.
Okay.
But things changed.
That's right.
Obviously. Yeah.
So can you say how you are now using the Dorpers along with um your commercial flocks of
Yeah.
sheep on the targeted grazing jobs?
You mean like
Yeah,
feeding wise?
yeah. So when you have a job, and it's not just Dorpers, you're using your commercial flocks as well, is what my understanding. And then you're also integrating
Yes.
Dorper
Yes.
sheep or Dorper crosses into that targeted grazing
Yep.
job as well.
Yeah. So most of the time we only use the Dorpers, but like after we wean our first loads of lambs off and sell them, we have all these dry ewes, and we kind of lately past few years we had a lot of rain, so it's kind of the feed's tall. We got a lot of work, a lot of tonnage we got to get down. So we've got a lot of mouths. So we say, you know what? They're not raising a lamb. The feed's not that bad. Let's take them. But we do not really typically put we do a lot of orchard grazing. We don't like to put the wool sheep inside the trees because they've caused us more problems than any other thing.
Can you say more on that?
Nibbled on more trees. We've had more problems with the wool sheep. Typically, it's like a lot of foxtail problems. Like with foxtail, when it starts turning between when it's green and dry, the wool sheep are more. How do you say that? Like they will not eat it, no matter what you do. They're not going to eat it. So we learned that. Like, I mean, we knew that. We tried it. It's like, well, maybe we can get them to eat a little bit of it. And we had the Dorpers right there. And it was like, well, if they can take the first cut off of it and we'll follow it. We had a lot we needed to get done. We tried it. Didn't work out. They started nibbling on things they weren't supposed to be nibbling on. So we'll use them on kind of anything that's not inside of trees usually. When it's not like that, it's a different story. Timing is a big thing with orchards. So basically you need to be mindful of that with using, I mean, that's all the sheep, but the bull sheep are more, they're going to eat the trees faster. So we've learned because they're not going to eat the foxtail even
Right. So
more so than the
they're
fish.
looking for feed, and if they don't like the feed, the foxtail feed because of all the seed heads
Yep.
and yawns, they're going to look for something else,
Yep.
and then they start going after the trees
Yeah.
themselves.
Yep. And another thing we've learned is when it rains, they go after the trees. Why? I don't know. That I don't understand. Nobody
Yeah.
understands it. I think it's simply a boredom thing. That
Yep.
being said, we didn't have that problem this year, so I don't. So when it rains, we just move them. If we know it's going to rain, we move them faster,
Okay.
which we know that we move them through faster. And since since with the rain, they usually with the ground getting muddy, it makes it a mess anyway. So it works out.
So the
You end up trampling.
dorpers, you can put the dorpers in that situation, some of those situations where the feed where the wool sheep are not really eating. You put the dorpers in, and they'll eat some of it, and then the wool sheep
Some
will.
of it.
Okay, then the wool sheep
Some
will
of
eat,
it.
or the wool sheep are done.
No, you do not. You just gotta take them out. You take them out and
Yeah.
you don't put them back because they're not gonna eat it. They just will
Yep.
not. They flat will not eat it. I mean, if you put them back in when it's dry, 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 yeah, they'll eat some of it, but not until it's crackers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Okay.
But not when it's turning. Even with the dorpers, you gotta be really careful. You just a lot of these guys they'll call us, March, April, especially when the trees, pistachios in specific, when they're starting to come out of their dormancy, when they're starting to push their saps and stuff, and they're waking back up, they're starting to push, right? And I swear they can smell the sap, and they are more prone to go after the trees. But this
Oh,
year, I
okay.
don't know. We had a really
Interesting.
interesting year. Spring, it was hot and it was cold. We didn't have that problem at all this year.
Okay.
So I don't know. But so it was nice, less stressful. But yeah, the the dorpers are not as they still will go after them. You just gotta be really paying attention to what's going on out there
And you say you
that
can
time of
push
year.
the dorpers harder, meaning that you can give them kind of a lower quality feed, and they'll be fine. And the
Fine
wool,
longer.
what's that?
They'll be fine longer.
Longer. Yeah.
They can
Okay.
take it. Yeah, they can take it. You know, they
Okay.
can they do okay on it. I mean, we still supplement them. We'll still give them protein tubs. That way, I mean, we still try to get somewhat of a lamb crop out of them, but
Right.
it's nothing beautiful. But we still put out protein tubs, and we don't want them to fall apart on us. So we try to take care of them the best we can when they're out on jobs. So that they get their protein tubs, their salt blocks, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Right. Right. They're not invincible.
yeah, no, I mean they're animals.
Right. Right.
We do
Okay.
our best. When we'll call when we load out when we're getting ready to go somewhere, and we know what the quality of feed is. You know we don't call them, but we condition score them as we load. Like anything that doesn't matter on age, just anything that doesn't look uniform or looks a little thinner, whatever,
Mhm.
just doesn't look as nice, whatever, fleshy. That's probably a nice word. There you go, fleshy. Then
Yeah.
we don't take them. We'll take them somewhere else. Something if we have a different job that has better feed, or even if it's not on a job, if they're for some reason are a little off, we'll just take them somewhere with better feed, get them back up to where they need to be,
Okay.
just to take care of them. You know.
Right. Right.
So
Okay.
unless they simply just need to be cold, then they just go. There's no around that. But
It sounds like you have a good variety of feed resources to be able to do that.
sometimes
Yeah. No,
depends on the year.
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna continue on with some information on genetic improvement, and so I got a few slides I wanted to show you, and also a clip of a video. And so when we're talking about genetic improvement, there's some traditional tools for that we all use for genetic improvement. And one of the very basic ones is breed selection. And that's basically knowing that breeds and taking advantage of these large differences between breeds and selecting the one that's most appropriate for your production system and also for the environment in which you operate. And that's what Julie is describing is they have their wool breed that they're using for a certain production system and then incorporated Dorpers for a different production system and also taking advantage of the differences for different environments. So with another tool is within breed selection. Because if you are just using breed alone, you're often going to find that your flock improvement is going to plateau. It's just going to be pretty stagnant if you're using breed selection alone and not in really any other criteria. So it's very common to use within breed selection in which you're kind of accurately identifying your superior replacement stock within the breed. Um, so in Julia's case, looking for superior Dorper stock, and also in the commercial flock, looking for superior Targhee, Finn, or the crosses that they maintain, and perhaps also looking for specific traits within breeds that they're some terminal breeds that they are using in their commercial stock commercial flocks. And with using within breed selection, you can make some flock improvement gains over time. At least that's the hope. If you're making good selection within the breeds. The other one is crossbreeding, and that's taking advantage of crossing one breed with another and getting hybrid vigor that improves productivity of the animal, whether it's increased size, increased carcass weight, increased overall vigor. So those are traditional tools that have been around for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, that have been commonly used for making genetic improvements in herds, whether they're sheep, cattle, what have you. Um, some of the breeds, if we're just talking about some breeds, kind of generally, some of the sheep breeds, just mainly talking about sheep. Some of the British breeds are generally known for having generally coarse wool. They're well adapted to cool, wet, hilly environments, and they tend to have pretty good carcass traits. Looking at some of the fine wool breeds, we're thinking of like Merino, Rambouillet. Targhee is also as generally fine wool, not as fine as Rambouillet or Targhee, but those are better adapted to dry, more desert like environments and have high fleece quality. Sometimes in some of the breeds, they have good carcass qualities. Some others, the carcass qualities aren't as good as some of the British breeds. Hair sheep, and there are lots of different types of hair sheep. Primarily thinking of Dorper, perhaps Katahdin. Um, since they have hair, no shearing. So as Julia was saying, you don't have the cost of shearing every year. And they maintain body condition pretty well with poorer feed conditions, as Julia was talking about. Doesn't mean you can ignore them in poor feed conditions. You still have to take care of them and supplement them when needed. And there are also a couple of tropical breeds that are also hair type breeds. They don't need to be shorn since they have hair, so no wool to take off. They're incredibly heat tolerant and also have a good parasite resistance. So those are just some general attributes, and you're thinking about breeds and their different breed groups. Um, and so how do you incorporate some of that information and um, into some genetic improvement? And one place to start is this basic genetic model in determining phenotype. And phenotype is just a fancy word for basically saying performance. And it's basically looking at the traits that we can measure. So for example, in this picture, we have a couple of rams that look like they're for sale at a ram sale, and they're labeled lot number 109. And if you were at a ram sale, you would want to know, okay, what's the merit? What's the genetic merit of these animals, or what's the how much value are they going to have if I were to buy them? And we know that their merit is going to be based on a couple of factors, mainly the breeding value or their genetics, their genetic attributes that they'll pass on to their offspring, and also the environment that in which they're raised. Could be environment, could be the climate, forage conditions, their neighbors are how many neighbors are there? How many other sheep are there? Animals are there? Um, and all a suite of other environmental conditions that affect their performance. And so these rams in this picture, and you can see one is kind of clipped on the side. That was probably for doing an ultrasound loin eye measurement. Another attribute that we can measure. They are the product of their genetics and the environment. We don't know though how much of what we can measure is attributed to their genetics versus the environment. Are they do they look the way they do because they were fed a certain way, because they were raised a certain way? And so trying to distinguish breeding value from environment is a strategy that is used in some other methods that I'll explain in a bit. But basically, the take-home message here is that in order to understand the genetic or the breeding merit of the animal, you have to consider the two factors, breeding value and environment. So some of the traditional methods of genetic selection I wanted to cover, and one is just visual appraisals of the animals. And by that, I mean looking at the conformation of the animals. Do they have sound legs, sound feet? General overall good conformation, attributes that you're looking for in your flock. The color of the wool, sometimes that's important to people. It also might tell you what breeds are present in a certain animal. Any deformities that you might see might be another selection criteria. The size of the animal, and also perhaps eating habits. Does it like to eat some of the poorer feed? Does it eat a lot, maybe relative to its body weight? Um, and some of the pros and cons of these visual appraisals would be that it's pretty fast and easy to gather information and make decisions on visual appraisal attributes. A con is that it's often very difficult to discern um, the genetic versus the environmental effects of these visual traits or traits that we are appraising visually. Um, so some other traditional methods for genetic selection would be on-ranch data collection. And people might be keeping records of breeds of the animals, their pedigree, perhaps the number of offspring at birth that you may have, or a doe may have, the number of lambs or kids weaned per year by a particular doe or ewe, maybe a scorecard for the females that would indicate how good perhaps they are mothering their offspring. How well are they caring for them? Do they run away when they are disturbed, or do they stay with the animal? The lamb weights. So these are all things that we can measure. Foot rot, body condition, foot rot prevalence, body condition score. We can measure these and we can record these pretty easily on ranch if we have a good record keeping system. Some of the pros and cons is that it provides more certainty in the decisions that we make when we are collecting this information on the ranch. Some of the cons is that it does take a fair amount of technology and time in recording the information, making sure it's accurate. Uh, During the field day, we'll demonstrate some of the technology that could be used for keeping better or keeping good records. Also keep in mind that these methods are most suited for selecting female breeding stock, basically ewes or those that are on your ranch, because we have information, we can measure information from the offspring of ewes and does that remain on the ranch. We can record body weight um, and and other attributes of the offspring. And it's kind of difficult to measure a lot of these attributes from the rams. And if we do not know who the offspring of the rams are. And so to do that, we would definitely have to have some parentage information, which would require, like a DNA test to understand, okay, this ram sired all of these offsprings, all these lambs and kids, and now we can attribute certain criteria or certain traits to that particular ram. It's a lot easier with on the female side on a working ranch to record those attributes in our records.
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah, please do.
There are small, usually these are on smaller operations. I've certainly seen larger operations that have big pens, but you can pen breed so you know like which ewes
True.
are in with one ram. And then there are other folks that will use those markers on the rams so they can see which rams have covered a ewe, but multiple rams can cover one ewe if you are pasture breeding with markers.
Right.
That's with it's more of a tool that I think folks are using to know when she was covered to kind of predict when they'll lamb. But so there are some tools that are more traditional in trying to predict parentage, or at least to like make sure that it's the right parentage. But yeah, at a large scale, that's certainly not what it seems like most folks are doing just because of the challenge with, yeah, doing that while you're constantly moving and all that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good point, Rosie. Thank you. Yeah, it is a lot different depending on the scale of operation that you have. Um, and another method of genetic selection is basically through reputation RAM. So you have a seed stock producer. A seed stock is someone who raises breeding stock. And so you may know that person and the genetics that they have, just the practices that they have, the vaccination schedule, the maybe vet checks that they have of their rams. And so it comes with a lot of certainty of the genetic stock and the performance of those animals, and gives you confidence in the producer where you're sourcing your breeding stock. And it also gives you some confidence in the genetics that you're sourcing if it's a known source. Man, sometimes it takes a while of using a specific seed stock producer and also talking to people to understand some of the qualities of certain seed stock producers. I guess one thing to keep in mind is that it is necessary to still diversify your sources. So you can't just keep going to the same source every time. Otherwise, you're going to have a genetic bottleneck in your flock. So it's good to get sources from that have a different pedigree from other places. Sometimes you have to go out of state to to find different sources. And there are also still some genetic unknowns if you're using these traditional genetic selection criteria. And I want to contrast these traditional methods with a new tool that we have. It's called estimated breeding values. And I put quotations around new because it's not that new. It's probably 40, maybe going on to 50 years old. That we've been using it here in the United States. And and it's abbreviated as EBVs. And what this is, it's a method in which we have an objective evaluation of the breeding value. So remember that the merit of an animal is based on the breeding value, the genetics, and also the environment. And so the EBVs are data driven based on the performance of an individual animal. So on their perhaps birth weight, weaning weight, on their fleece weight or fleece diameter, the other attributes that we can measure, like loin-eye area. But it's not just based on the individual, it's also based on that individual's genetic relatives. So it could be relatives that are in the flock, could be relatives that are on neighboring farms, ranches. It could be also relatives from across on flocks across the United States. And so the more information you have on the performance of that individual and his relatives, the better the breeding value, better the accuracy of the breeding value. So basically what it does is it removes all of these environmental effects so you can evaluate an animal based on just the genetic or estimated genetic breeding value. And this is an example of EBVs, 8-week weight, litter size, maternal ability, scan weight, muscle depth, fat depth, just an example of some breeding values that could be used to evaluate a ram in this case. So to show you more about breeding values, I wanted to show certain sections of a video that we have from some webinars that we did on EBVs. This first one, Estimated Breeding Values in Sheep Production 101, was done in 2004, just about almost exactly 2 years ago. And the second one was done last year. So I wanted to show, these are linked. Let me escape out of this and go to my website, my web browser, and move my Zoom bar. All right. So I'm going to play certain clips. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but so Tom Murphy gave this presentation, and Tom is really good in clearly explaining estimated breeding values, what they are and how they are used. So first, you're just going to see an introduction of Tom.
My name's Tom Murphy, and I'm a sheep geneticist with the USDA's Agricultural Research Service at the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center in Clay Center, Nebraska. And I'm also the chair of the technical committee for the National Sheep Improvement Program.
All right, so that's introduction of Tom. I'm going to fast forward to, let's see, 8 minutes and 52 seconds. Oops. This is really jumpy. Right there, it's close enough.
Thinking about going solar,
gosh.
but not sure whether
Sorry about that.
for your home. Well, before you get quotes,
because what we see phenotypically is not always what we get genetically.
Thinking about going solar, but not sure whether it's worth it for your home. Well, before you get quotes.
So what is a breeding value? Well, it's kind of a theoretical thing. Let's imagine that we can peer into the genome of this lamb and kind of ride along their DNA from one end to the other. And every time we encounter a gene that might impact weaning weight, we take note as to whether that variant this animal had at that gene location had a positive or negative effect on weaning weight, and also how large that effect was. And by the end of this genome, we just add up all of those effects to arrive at this animal's true breeding value for that trait. And doing this, you notice a few things. First, there's many genes that impact all of our economically important traits, like weaning weight. We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of genes. These aren't just one or few genes. And secondly, each of these gene variants had a pretty small effect on weaning weight by itself. In this example, only increasing or decreasing weight by 100th of a pound. But when we sum up over those thousands of locations across the genome, we can see very large differences in breeding value between individuals. So both of those things are true, but we can't actually do this in practice. We don't know where all of these genes are. We don't know how many there are, and we don't know what their relative effects are on performance. So we actually won't ever know an animal's true genetic merit or true breeding value for a trait. But just like anything that we don't know with absolute certainty, we can try to predict or estimate. And so in the case of breeding values, we refer to them as estimated breeding values or EBVs. So what we do know is an animal's performance or phenotype for a trait because we can directly measure. As we learned, what we don't know is the animal's true breeding value for the trait because we can't directly measure all of the effects of all of the genes that can influence a trait. So our solution is to estimate breeding values by using the performance we record on an individual, as well as the performance of any of their genetic relatives that we have available to us. And so the catch is how accurate our estimate is. In the case of estimated breeding values, our accuracy is influenced by the amount of information that we're using to make our estimate, as well as the heritability of the trait. So heritability is a very important concept in livestock production, and I'm sure you've all heard the term before. And if you search for its definition, you'll probably see an equation like this that tells us that heritability is the proportion of a trait's breeding value variance relative to its phenotypic variance. That's mathematically true, but it's not a great working definition. Another equally true definition is that a trait's heritability just indicates the strength of the relationship between an animal's performance for a trait and their breeding value for the trait. Said another way, a trait's heritability tells us how closely the performance of a parent is expected to resemble the performance of their progeny. So heritability can range from 0 to 1, and it varies depending on the trait that we're considering. Traits like lamb survival or number of lambs born have pretty low heritability, whereas growth or muscling are more moderately heritable, and the most heritable traits in sheep production tend to be our fleece traits. So not all traits are created equally, and particularly for lowly heritable traits, when we just consider that individual's own performance to try to predict how good it is genetically, it's not a very good indicator. This doesn't mean that we can't make improvements in these types of traits, these lowly heritable traits. It just means that we need to consider more information than just an individual's performance if we want to make the most accurate selection decisions and ultimately the most rapid genetic progress. So fortunately, we can improve the accuracy of our selection decisions by considering the performance of not just the individual in question, but also the performance on any genetic relatives that they might
I'm
have.
gonna jump this
This is an
ahead.
important point to make. More and more information.
And jump this ahead to where he explains the application of what does an EBV really mean.
We've talked about how EBVs are kind of conceptually calculated. What do they actually mean, and how can we use them in practice? So an EBV, it's just a number. It's expressed in the same units that we measure traits on. So that can be kilograms for weight, or microns if we're talking about fiber diameter, and many other traits. And how large or small an EBV is tells us how we expect the animal to perform for the trait relative to the rest of animals in its breed. So we've got two Targhee rams here, and we've got their EBVs for weaning weight, fiber diameter, and number of lambs born. And so we can compare these two rams by just taking the difference between their EBVs for each of these traits to make some conclusions about their genetic merit. So we can interpret this as we expect ram 1 here on the left to carry a set of gene variants that make him have 3.5 pounds heavier weaning weight than ram 2, or the difference between 2.5 kilograms and 0.9 kilograms. We can also say that we expect ram 1 to carry a set of gene variants that make him have a 1.1 micron finer fiber diameter and a 10% greater lamb crop. So again, just taking the difference between their EBVs for each of these traits. But these rams have already performed for weaning, right? They might be 2 years old when we're evaluating. So they've already had a weaning weight. They've already had a fiber diameter measurement. And for a trait like number of lambs born, they're never going to have a performance record because they're males. So a better way to interpret EBVs is kind of prospective, or how we expect their progeny. And since parents contribute half of their genes to their progeny, they also contribute, on average, half of their estimated breeding value to their progeny. So we can take that difference between each ram's EBVs for each of these traits and divide by 2 and say that we expect lambs from ram 1 to weigh, on average, 1.8 pounds heavier at weaning. We expect lambs from ram 1 to have a 0.6 micron finer fiber diameter. And daughters that we eventually get out of ram 1 will have a 5% greater lamb crop than daughters out of ram 2. We can also use EBVs to determine how much more you could spend maybe on one ram compared to another. So just setting up an example here, if we took these rams home and assumed that we bred them to 35 ewes each, your ewes weaned on average 1.4 lambs, and you got 3 years of service out of these rams, you could expect to market 265 total pounds more lamb from ram 1 than ram 2. And so depending on your market price for lambs, this could be 530 extra dollars that you could conceivably spend on ram 1 than ram 2.
All right, I'm going to stop that right there. And this gives you basically a kind of a flavor for what EBVs are, how they are used, and kind of the value that they provide, and kind of removing the effects of the environment when you're making genetic selection decisions. And if you can certainly, you're welcome to look at these videos. In fact, I suggest that if you want to learn more about EBVs. So when we share these slides, you'll have these links in your slides. So the EBV EBVs in the United States are all managed by the National Sheep Improvement Program. And these are all the different traits that they are providing EBVs for. Not every breed has all these traits. Sometimes it's more limited depending on the breed, and it's often limited by the information they have for each breed. But this gives you an idea of they have growth traits, carcass traits, reproductive traits, parasite resistance, wool traits, and indexes. And it seems like some of the more accurate traits are those, like Tom was saying, are the wool traits. So a lot of these aren't necessarily relevant to targeted grazing operations. They're more relevant to commercial sheep production, but sometimes some of these may be of interest and could be used in targeted grazing situations or targeted grazing flocks as well, depending on what it is you are looking for in your flock. So with that, I wanted to just going to return quickly to Julia and get some information. Then I'm going to pass it on to Rosie. So Julia, you're still there, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Excellent. So can you tell us about your selection process? And do you use more traditional methods of selecting breeding stock, or do you use EBVs, and why do you use that particular method?
Everything is fairly traditional. Because I don't really have any EBVs for the rams we buy. As far as the dorpers, most of the outside dorpers we buy are from Utah, and the guy that we buy them from imports semen to AI has used from Australia. So
Okay.
I asked him a lot of questions and about what he's buying and stuff like that, why he bought it from whatever specific strain, what qualities he's looking for, good shedding, good legs, good feet. Dorpers notoriously kind of have not so good hooves and are kind of everything I've come across. I mean, I think there's a lot of inbreeding in the Dorpers, and I've seen a lot of not so great hooves, at least in my experience. Anyway, so it's been something we've been working on. Slow improvement, but it's been happening. So stuff like that. Carcass quality. I mean, we still look at that. We still are a commercial sheep operation, so we still lambs still. So it's another thing we look at. Dorpers do have good carcasses, so we do ask these questions when we buy the rams. Yeah, stuff like that. Conformation, scrotal circumference, all that stuff. Yeah, just kind of things like that.
So you do your homework.
Yes, I ask a lot of questions because there's a lot of crap out there.
Right.
Blunt and true.
Yeah.
And the other thing is there's a lot of Dorpers are related. You ask, well, where did you get your line from? Well, I bought it from so-and-so. Where'd he buy it from? Oh, well, I got it from the same guy. Okay, well, that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to find an outcross. So that's hard.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah. So that's the reason why you're going to Utah to find Dorper genetics.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. And
Yep.
can you tell us? So you last week you were describing to me this one situation in which you purchased replacement ewes into your flock. But can you say more about how you typically source your replacements, whether you raise them or you purchase them, and why you do that?
Well, we purchased ewes initially. We have not purchased. Well, yeah, we've only bought ewe lambs one time, and we bought a handful from Andresaurus one time. Just because we were trying to grow and we didn't have a whole lot of ewe lambs one year. We asked her if she had any for sale, and she's like, yeah, we have a few. We bought a few. That's the only time we bought any other ewe lambs. Other than that, we haven't bought anything except for when we bought the original ewes. Other than that, we keep our own ewe lambs, just because they're kind of hard to find. And they're expensive to buy, so you may as well just raise your own.
Right, right. Okay,
I think that answers the question. Yeah.
right. You did.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am gonna pass this on to, I'm gonna stop sharing and pass this on to Rosie.
Right. I'm here. I'm trying to figure out how to get this up into. Here we go. Okay. Well, thank you, Julia, for being here. I just realized my.
No problem. I'm just amazed that my cell service is holding.
I know,
Very
that's
impressive.
awesome.
It never happens.
That's good. It's amazing. So we were just talking about selection of or how you breed replacements. When I feel like especially growing operations tend to keep all their ewe lambs, are there things that are non-negotiable that you will either cull older ewe lambs or won't keep their oh, sorry, I said older ewe lambs. That's
Yes.
like,
I
either
know what you're
culling
I
older
understand what
ewes,
you're saying.
yeah, or like
Yeah.
that you won't keep their lambs as
Yes.
replacements.
Yes. Confirmation. It's usually confirmation based.
Mhm.
Or this is just gonna sound terrible. Color. We're trying to run a uniform outfit, and the ewes that we bought have a little bit of Katahdin in them, and my dad can't stand anything that's not uniform. So anything has a little bit of brown in them, they go.
It
Well,
doesn't
they
sound
probably have
terrible.
to end it.
I definitely appreciate that. I like a uniform looking flock.
I agree. I agree with it. I know to some people it might sound terrible.
Yeah, no, and I think for me it helps me, my shepherd's eye isn't as trained as your all, but it helps the ones that don't look so good, they stand out like a sore thumb. When when they look different, it's harder to appreciate the ones that don't fit, right? Like I think that
Oh,
uniformity
100%.
would,
It's like
yeah.
there's something wrong with you, for
Yes,
sure.
exactly. Yeah. Cool. So you said soundness or like confirmation. Do you guys select much for fertility in your targeted grazing flock? Or is it that more
I
like a
wish that there
traditional?
was
All the drama. My husband
We
is
try to.
fucking worth.
Oh,
Sorry.
wow.
That was
Hey, I mean, we all have our days. Yeah, we try to. Like sometimes I don't know. This sounds kind of weird, but like we'll watch the ewes, and I swear you can tell. Like it'll be this big fat ewe, and every year we'll look at her and like that ewe has not had a lamb. We'll watch her for 2 years, because I mean it's kind of hard to watch them or to track them. Because we preg check.
Yeah.
We started preg checking the Dorpers this past year. I think it was the first year we did it. We preg check all of them, all the other sheep, but just hadn't been doing the Dorpers just because. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think we just don't want to spend the money.
Yeah.
But we did it this year for feed purposes, and we'll continue doing it. But yeah, we try to cull out anything that's not productive. But in the same hand, if we need the mouths, we'll keep them. Like if we
Right.
need their mouths,
Right.
it's just different. It depends what you need.
Yeah. It's
Like,
nice to
right
know
now
which ones you could cull if you had to or
Yes.
sell for. Yeah.
We did the same thing with our wool sheep this year. We pregged them all, put a big long red line on their backs, and we held them 2 months longer than we would have, just because we needed mouths for a
Yeah.
while.
That's smart. That's awesome.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I think maybe that's what you're asking me.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, because it's like they're different your goals are different
Yeah.
for them, but still you want a
Yeah.
productive animal that
Yeah.
is going to
And there's some of
contribute.
them that, like, it's like cows. Same thing with cows. They'll turn up pregnant, when you check them, and then they'll abort the calf, the lamb. Same thing. And every time they'll come up and they'll turn up red, but and then you start realizing when you're castrating or whatever, this ewe is big, she's wide, and she's never had a lamb. She's just bigger than the rest of them. You know what? You're like, you know what? She's just a big fat dry ewe, and she's got to
Yep.
go.
She's a
She's not
freeloader.
The freeloader.
Yeah.
It's like, other than your mouth, what are you worth to me?
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
maybe
You
you just need to
do
go.
that diversity of income and just being able to be
Yeah.
flexible is important and
Yeah.
nice to know what you have.
Yep.
Awesome. Do you
We
guys
have
do
one
any
black ewe,
one?
and she's
Why is
dry.
that?
Just because we just have one black ewe, and she's been dry for like 2 years, and we keep keeping her
That's
just because,
awesome.
for the hell of it.
She's your marker.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I gotta have one black sheep in the outfit.
Do you guys keep more? I don't know. I know your operation, especially for targeted grazing, is still young and growing. But do you guys think about like keeping replacements for their kind of health traits? Like they're more vigorous, they seem to have, like you said, better feet. Or are you keeping all of your ewe lambs at this point?
We keep most of them. It's
Yeah.
pretty hard to differentiate with the way we run. But if
Yeah.
there's anything that we can tell that tells us like, hey, this one's not gonna produce, this one's not gonna, this one's not gonna be a producer, yeah, we'll get rid of it.
Okay. Cool.
But we do everything fairly visual, so it's pretty hard to.
I've seen some pretty good tricks for different earmarks and things that mean different
Oh yeah. Do ear notch and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah. Like
Awesome.
we'll track them like ear notches, or we'll do all kinds of stuff just because you gotta halfway track them down if you can.
Yeah. There's a dairy farmer that I've used to work with, and he said that the cow doesn't lie, meaning anything that's written on the cow is the truth. That's what happened.
Yeah.
So if you went through the effort to write it down, to brand her, earmark her, that is what happened. So
yeah. In our case, if the ewe's got a quarter of her ear cut, there's something up with her. She's got to go.
Yeah. Awesome. Those are good tricks.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to change topics to just breeding basics, and I will have some questions for you kind of sprinkled throughout. But I'm going to start with kind of when these guys go into kind of sexual maturity, and it is different depending on breed, and I'd love to know if you do see that between your two flocks, like ram lambs are typically they'll mature a little bit earlier than ewe lambs. But we don't like usually we don't recommend breeding them till they're about 75% body weight. Does that what do you see between Dorpers and your wool sheep that you guys have?
They 100% mature faster. The ram lambs, we are basically, if they're 4 months, I call them breeders, because we've had screw ups from a lamb that got by us. We didn't get cut. It's it's not that big.
Yeah.
Well, we have lambs.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
Well, it had to have been that lamb that got by us.
Yep.
So
yeah. So that's important when you're
That
thinking about marking lambs and all that, timing that. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's a yes. The ewe lambs, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you exactly to switch to ewe lambs. When do you see with those guys?
Same thing. They do mature faster, but we try to wait until those don't start lambing for us until they're they're, like you said, 75% grown, or not grown, until they're almost a year old,
Yeah.
So yearlings.
Cool. Yeah. So those guys you can get to lamb right as yearlings, whereas our bigger breeds, we tend to wait a little bit longer because they are bigger. They take longer to mature. Cool. And then seasonality is an issue for sheep and goats. It seems less so in California. We've just figured that out. We breed right now in May and June.
Yeah.
And
We've got rams in right now.
yeah, so I have you seen much of a difference between like
Oh,
conception rates between the two as far as seasons go?
I mean, I'm gonna say that our rates between the Dorpers and the our other flock is just not comparable. Because I mean, our cutting rates are, 100 and 111%, 115, 20, maybe 120%. They just, they don't twin,
Yeah,
but it's not terrible. It's not
yeah.
terrible.
And that may
So
just be more of a breed difference than,
it's
yeah,
a breed difference, a feed difference. You got to think about what
right,
you're doing with the animal when they're, when they're supposed to be breeding. They're
yeah,
not on good feed. They're
right,
not on, feed baby the other sheep. Like, oh, well, that's not good enough feed. They can't go there. They have to go
yeah,
here. The other
right.
sheep are like, well, they kind of have to go there, so it is
Yeah,
what it is.
that's what it is. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. So
So,
we most of my slides are for sheep. But so their cycle length is usually averages right at 17 days. So when we think
yep.
about breeding windows, we think in numbers of cycles. Where are you guys at for kind of your breeding window, which then equates to your lambing season?
So, yeah, we have a very long lambing season. We put the rams in last week, or no, 2 weeks ago. We won't pull them until, hang on a second, I gotta think here. We won't pull them until, I'm trying not to lie to you, late September or early October.
Okay.
Yeah, that way we just try to get the most lambs out of them as possible.
Yeah, and that probably helps with the ewe lambs that have. So
Yes,
when we have
exactly.
like fall born ewe lambs, it's really hard for them to come into cycling until it approaches that
Uh-huh.
late summer. So I imagine most of your ewe lambs are getting bred later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll even like move them in like first week October, just it's usually a screw up. It's like, oh well, they got left in a week longer. What else?
Yeah.
I guess we're gonna lamb them in a week or
Yeah.
whatever. But
So when you are you guys thinking about when and where you're gonna lamb as
yes,
right now as far as like how does that factor in your breeding season? You're thinking about we've talked about ram
yeah,
selection, youth selection, but you're actually thinking about lambing. So how do you guys factor
yeah.
that in?
So we operate. We're based out of Madera. We're near the west side of Westlands Water District, which I'm sure most people don't know what that is. It's the biggest water district in the United States. However, it has no water,
Huh.
hardly any water. So therefore, it has a ton of retired ground that you can't irrigate. So leases are pretty inexpensive. So we have some leases that we use. We have our own leases, and we have leases that we can, traditional sheep grazing situations, dry farm, whatever.
Mhm.
So we try to plan the lambing based off the rainfall that we had the year before, because we
Okay.
kind of lamb on dry feed
Okay.
and dry farm with supplementation. And we start lambing the last week of August,
Okay.
and we try to wrap up the first, the bulk of it. We try to have it, all the mature ewes, we try to have them belted out by, the second week October, right before all the bull sheep start belting them out. That way we don't have a ton of sheep lambing at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though we continue lambing, it's not like we're having 100 a day. It's just 10
Yeah.
here and there.
It's kind
So
of
I think that, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Maybe.
I skipped a step, so I am supposed to ask you about kind of ram power and what you were looking. We talked about kind of genetic, how you might select rams based on their performance qualities, but what else are you kind of, we typically we look for just kind of reproductive soundness, and that's all the stuff that we're doing right now, like with the ram sale. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I know there's a lot of variation with what we consider ram power. So like how many rams are in with ewes. And I think a lot of that depends on our breeding season, how tight we want to push them. If we're
Yeah.
synchronizing, that'll make it even harder for rams to cover that many ewes at once.
Yeah.
So with your guys' system, what kind of ram power are you guys looking at?
Hang on a second. I'm doing the math.
No
I'm just so busy lately. I'm like, I know. Give me one second. I'll tell you.
worries, no worries.
Oh shit. I did that wrong. Okay, yeah. I put 13 rams on 500 ewes, so that's like each ram's got to cover 38 ewes.
Awesome. Yeah,
That's
I feel
kind of
like
average we did.
yeah, and I think our average in California is around 30 to 50. And in
Yeah.
other places that aren't don't have the same terrain that we do, they'll go up to like 100 ewes per ram. That's pretty high. I don't think I've seen many folks in California doing that. And then when you
Yeah.
get, yeah, younger rams or synchronized kind
Hmm.
of situations that you can see 10 ewes per ram. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Are you guys looking for like scrotal circumference or, there's,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously you want something that's got some testes on it.
yeah, gonna perform.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we talked about
Especially for,
how your breeding season, you can plan out your lambing season, and that's because we know kind of the length of pregnancy. And you mentioned that this year you ultrasounded. Um, so we can manage dry use separately. We can count fetuses, but that's in a really small window of opportunity.
Mhm.
And then we can do things like aging, pregnancies, and things. But I think a lot of like what you talked about, a lot of folks are scanning just so they can kind of manage their nutrition a little bit better. Did that seem
Yep.
to work for you guys this year doing that?
Yeah. That's a lot of the reason we do it, obviously, and to know, did the sheep breed.
Yeah,
It's a twofer. Yeah.
right.
A lot of it's nutrition and the sheep getting a little better bred, obviously. But
Yeah, because if you have a lot of dry ewes, there might be something else going on that we just
exactly.
overlooked a little bit. Yeah.
Something's not right.
Yeah. Cool. So what
Yeah.
we've been describing are kind of just like our traditional annual breeding systems where we tend to put rams in one time a year, and we make sure there's downtime between when ewes were weaned before they're bred again. Um,
Hmm.
and that downtime is really helpful because I think, there's a huge, like you said, there's the fat ewe that comes in at weaning. You're like, okay, she like, there's no way she raised a lamb. But
Yeah.
it's really tempting to want to like cull ewes that are super skinny at weaning, but then you have to like remind yourself, okay, probably
Yeah.
she raised twins and, she's on
Hmm.
this rough feed. And so it's,
Yeah.
that downtime between when they're weaned to when we want to breed them again is really important for making sure that they can kind of recover that condition.
Right.
Um, there are certainly herds that are opportunistic breeding where we just leave bucks out all year round, but we can lose a lot of productivity that way because, like you said, without knowing a breeding season, when would you even scan? And, so you can, I think, there's certainly opportunities with that. It's a very low input. But then you have
Yep.
to have bucks in there all the time. And
Yeah. Trust me, I know the pain. That's how
yeah.
we run the cattle. I'm gonna
Yeah,
stop. But yeah.
they're
Hmm.
buggers. They
Yep.
can be butthead.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
and then there is accelerated lambing. That is totally an East Coast thing. It is where ewes will lamb 3 times in 2 years, and they pretty much have to be on rations to
Right.
keep up condition to do that. So it doesn't really fit a targeted grazing model where
No.
you're, yeah, just kind of, you know,
I mean,
getting
but
one.
I don't think that even fits a West Coast model.
No, yeah, I know of one person who's doing it and it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, nutrition's super important. So you can lose, if they're having twins, they all of a sudden can just stop having twins. And
Uh-huh.
so, but yeah, so some of the opportunities with this kind of annual breeding system is that you can plan your labor and feed resources like we talked about, and then you can kind of optimize when you market. And so depending on, if you really narrow down your lambing or kidding window, it really makes a uniform crop. But if you have enough animals and have a bigger breeding season, you maybe have different market opportunities with that as well.
Yep.
Um, awesome. Then with nutrition, we talked about how it helps with onset of puberty and conception rates, like how many twins they're going to have. We can also see differences in kind of lamb vigor, kid vigor when they're born, colostrum quality, and milk production. So I don't know if do you see much of a difference in kind of your lamb performance in these kind of different nutrition systems?
Yeah, definitely. We last year, I'm trying to think. A lot of the sheep we've lambed out on some real nice stubbles that were actually irrigated, which was really nice. Not
Yeah.
common for us. And the milk production on the front end was terrible. And I can't remember what they were on before. I'm just trying to remember. They were on something. I think they were just on some shitty dry farm.
Yeah.
And we were like, you know what? The milk's crap. We'll just truck them over. It wasn't very far. So we trucked them over, put them on the other stuff, and within a week, the milk production went way up, and the lambs were looking a lot better.
That's
So
awesome.
once again, nutrition, and we had the tubs out. We always, we know, obviously, like I said, we're lambing on dry. We're lambing on dry. So we've
Yeah.
got protein tubs out so they
And
can get supplements.
there's certainly some breed variability with like lamb vigor. Like some of those hair breed lambs get up and run before you can
Oh
even.
yeah,
So that
yeah.
is a good
What?
thing.
Yeah. Once we got the milk situation fixed, everybody was good.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody was all fine.
Yeah. It is interesting though. I
Yeah.
do feel like the milk it sometimes is an afterthought and they're like, oh wait, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Really
well,
important.
yeah, and I mean, the feed really wasn't that bad. It was sparse,
Yeah.
and
It just
they
wasn't
just weren't walking.
translating to
It, it
production.
just wasn't translating as well as we thought it
Yeah.
would have. And we also feed coal honeydews because there's a honeydew packer nearby us, and we've been doing it for a long time. And so the ones that had lambed out there, we started hauling a bunch of the melons over there, so they were getting a lot of sugar out of they actually kind of, I don't know what it is about the honeydews, but honeydews, melons, whatever, they get a lot of sugar, water, whatever, vitamins out of the melons also, and that helps until
Yeah.
until they hardened up until we could move them. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I have seen rumen acidosis in a cow they were on cull honeydews.
yeah, gotta be
So
careful with it.
definitely a lot of sugar. Yeah, I gotta go slow with
Yeah,
them. They,
yeah,
some of them get too excited. So
yeah, yeah. You have to like warm them up to it so they don't go crazy.
yeah. So you talked about supplements a little bit. Do you guys flush at all before breeding, or is that just not an important piece of your breeding?
Uh, Not with the Dorpers.
Yeah.
I mean, not really anyway. I mean, we
Yeah.
try to, but it just depends on the year.
Yeah.
This year we didn't. this year,
Yeah. I
this
don't
year
know.
they went from, yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if
no
it
worries.
would impact their twinning rate at all. I don't know if they could support twins even, so it
Yeah,
seems
some of
like,
them could.
yeah.
I, we have some raising triplets that one of our guys, he had the
Wow.
time, and yeah, he had the time on one of our jobs. And, the feed was tall, so they were lambing the tail enders, and you know, didn't have enough milk, so he made twins, and then there was another ewe didn't have enough milk. This yearling had a ton of milk, so he made triplets, like 5 or 6 ewes raising triplets
Wow.
on their
That's
own.
impressive. That's really
I
impressive.
know. That's what I said. I was like, oh, okay,
Awesome.
hell yeah,
Cool.
I'll take it. But it's hard.
Yeah.
They're not like the other sheep, you know. It's a little harder for them to do it. They'll do twins, but not as often.
Yeah.
It's not they don't have the milk. They just don't. They can have the milk. They just don't have the twins as easily.
Yeah. And that when they have more lambs, they usually have, not always, but typically they'll have more milk. So then,
Exactly.
if they're always having singles, then their
Uh-huh.
udder isn't as developed and all that.
Yep. Exactly.
As far as planning for lambing season, you mentioned you have a longer lambing season than, I don't know, like the 60 days that I was talking about. And part of kind of why I bring up lambing windows in general is because we need to plan labor around it. And most traditional lambing seasons do kind of a peak, right? Like you start off nice and slow and then you peak to, like you said, sometimes 200, 300 ewes lambing a day, and then it trails off again. And
Yep.
so like when you spread that out, your peak isn't as high. So that can help with labor. Other ways to help with labor, or even managing around feed resources is to do synchronization of estrus. So you kind of know when your ewes are likely to go in heat. That's one of our challenges in the sheep industry is they have silent heat. So we can't detect heat. It has to be the ram that does it.
Yep.
So there are protocols for doing synchronization. There's also folks, like with smaller flocks that will do timed lap AI or embryo transfers for the folks that are importing genetics from outside the US. They really want to make sure they're successful with those. So there are strategies for that. And then, as far as breeding out of season, which is pretty much what we tend to do in California, not all producers are doing that. But it's usually around feed resources or access to markets, or like what you guys do with targeted grazing. Does I know I've heard of some folks that want to lamb certain times a year so that it doesn't interfere with jobs. How do you guys kind of navigate that with lambing and being on? That seems to be like when you have those big open leases.
Right. So far it's worked out for us to be able to lamb before we lamb out the wool sheep. That's our big thing. That's like number one. We do not want to lamb all the sheep at one time. It would be too much. But we don't want to have a ton of more. We don't have to bring more. I can't talk. There we go. We don't want to have to bring more lambers over for one contract. We want to just keep the same guys. They know what they're doing and keep, so we want to lamb them before or after the peak of the wool sheep. So as far as jobs, it's worked out that we have been lambing before the wool sheep as of now. That could change eventually, but because we do a lot of orchard grazing and things like that, it's a window that fits for us.
Awesome.
At this time, because that is kind of a slow stuff. It's kind of when we do a little bit of HOA stuff, a couple other things, and August is kind of when it dies down, and we kind of need to be able to start picking it up end of October, beginning of November. So that's kind of our big window to get the bulk of them lambed out.
Yeah.
So
that's smart because then you're not having to move as much, and it gets hard.
Yeah.
Awesome.
At least as of now, anyway.
Yeah. Well, do you have advice that you would give someone who's starting a target grazing flock today?
Just do your homework on what you're going to do, or, do your homework. And if you know if you have an idea of what you're going to be grazing, that would be a good thing. Or have an idea of what kind of targeted grazing you want to do. even though, it's hard to say, I want to do this kind of target grazing, but
Right.
if you have a direction you want to go in, that helps.
Yeah.
Because, different avenues, there's different challenges, different avenues, the solar, the orchard grazing, and we've done all kinds of different things. Currently we're doing a lot of orchard grazing and HOAs. So
Yeah. I think that's some of the
doing your homework.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so impressive to me is there's, so much flexibility and yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Doing your homework and don't go screw your competition, don't go undercut everybody.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, don't
Right.
do that to everybody. Like, we're all out here trying to make a living. Don't undercut your competitor. Just,
Yeah.
just because somebody said, oh, I'll do it for, I'll do your whatever for $150 an acre, and you're just out to, I don't like them, whatever, or I can do it better. Or you go tell them I'm the best. I'll do it for $85 an acre. Okay, why are you doing that? Aren't we
Yeah.
out here to make some money? Like,
Right.
we all live in California, don't we?
We all need everyone in
I
this
think we all have.
industry. Yep.
Yeah, like, okay, try to keep it the same. Talk to people that are doing the same thing as you are. That are doing the same kind of grazing that you're doing. Stuff like that.
Yeah. There's
I think
plenty
that's
of
a big thing.
opportunity. Make those relationships. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relationships are huge. Just,
Awesome.
it's, yeah, I don't know. That would be a lot of my advice. And
That's good advice.
I don't know. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Julia, for being here. I think there's maybe opportunities for a few questions, but I think, yeah, we've learned a lot and we really appreciate you taking the time. It was really awesome.
Yeah, of course. Of
Well,
course.
thank you, Julia. Really appreciate
Yep.
you taking the time for this.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, we're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat, so I don't see any questions, but cool. Well, I think
All
we'll
right.
let you go so you can
All
keep
right.
on, keep on.
Sounds good.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Julia. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Have a
Take
good
care.
one.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Any thoughts, any questions? Well, if there are no questions, comments, we will shut this down and everyone enjoy the rest of your week, rest of your night, and the rest of your week.